In episode 6 of my Doodle Art Podcast series, I'm going to be drawing yet another page from my upcoming Toad-themed coloring book. This particular doodle puts the little guys into a setting featuring mystical mountains and magical mushroom houses. I'll also be discussing how to overcome the fear of getting started. Hey guys, Craig here. Hope everybody's doing well. Okay, so the topic of this Doodle Art podcast is going to be how to overcome the fear of getting started. So regardless of what type of creative journey you're considering embarking on, if you're finding that your nerves are preventing you from taking that first initial step, then stick around because this video is for you. So if you're ready, let's start doodling. When it comes to the fear of getting started, there are two main catalysts that contribute to the phobia. The first is the fear of the unknown, and the second is the fear of failure. Both of these fears play a major role in why someone may be hesitant to start something new. So it's best to think of both of these fears separately, because they both require a different means to overcome them. When talking about the fear of the unknown, what's really worrying you is not knowing what to expect from a particular situation or event. It's much easier to take part in something when you already know what the outcome is going to be before you even get started. An example of this would be walking across an empty, well-lit room. Unless there's something physically wrong with you that might make that task a little more difficult, you can be fairly certain that your journey across the room will be relatively uneventful. You pretty much know before you even start walking that you'll successfully make it to the other side of the room without any problems. Now, if you were to turn off the lights in that room and fill it with a bunch of sharp, jagged objects, that would be an entirely different ballgame. Knowing that you could be potentially harmed just by taking a single step could produce a tremendous amount of fear and hesitation within you, and rightfully so. That fear of not knowing what to expect in this situation is definitely a justifiable reason to procrastinate. But the problem arises when that fear of the unknown begins to affect us in our daily lives during situations that are in no way harmful to us. An example of this would be starting up a new part-time business. When you're at that stage where you're just thinking about doing it, it can kind of get overwhelming because you're not really sure of what's going to be involved. So questions start arising like, how difficult is it going to be? How much of my time is it going to take? How much money will it cost me to do it? Do I need any particular skills to be able to run this business? And if I do, where can I find them? And how much money could I potentially make, and is it even worth my time? But it's not just limited to starting a new business. The fear of the unknown can affect you when starting any new task. But with each different task, the questions are going to be slightly different. Take this drawing for instance. Every time I start a new piece of doodle art, I get hit by the fear of the unknown. The first question that's always running through my head is, what am I going to draw? And that's usually followed by a barrage of additional questions like, what's the layout of this image going to look like? How long is this piece going to take? What if it doesn't look good when it's done? Will anybody even buy this coloring book once it's published? Or am I just wasting my time? And those types of negative questions inundate my brain whenever I pretty much do anything new. But the good news is that you can make all of those questions go away by simply answering them. And to do that, all you need to do is educate yourself. The solution to the fear of the unknown is education. So staying with this drawing example, the first question that causes me to hesitate is, what am I going to draw? To answer that question, I start looking for reference images to get some inspiration. Once I've spent an hour or so gathering reference images from the internet, I have a much better idea of what it is I want to draw. And because I've answered that first question, I tend to be much more confident about getting started. But even so, I still have some reservations about moving forward with this project. And that's because those additional negative questions are still running through my head. So another question that's holding me back is, what's the layout of this drawing going to look like? Having no idea of what the drawing layout might look like is yet another thing that's causing me to procrastinate. So to remove that doubt from my mind, I'll often just rough out a very rudimentary drawing using nothing but basic shapes. Doing this gives me a much better idea of what the placement, scale, and perspective of the drawing are going to be. Using a rough sketch to answer that second question instills even more confidence in me, which removes even more of the initial hesitation that was preventing me from starting the drawing in the first place. And the more information that I gather, the more of those negative questions eventually get answered. How long is this piece going to take? Once I know what I'm drawing, I can do a pretty accurate estimation of how long the drawing will take me to complete. What's it going to look like when it's done? Again, once I have a better idea of what I'm going to be drawing, the visual image in my head is usually a pretty accurate interpretation of how the final piece will turn out. The more of those negative questions that I remove from my head, the less mental resistance I face getting started. And this holds true for pretty much any project you're starting. I hesitated for almost 6 months when I was first considering starting my YouTube channel, and it was because of all those negative questions that were plaguing my every thought. So I spent another 6 months gathering research just so I could answer those questions. Now luckily for those of you who are currently considering starting your own YouTube channel, I've put the answers to all of those questions into the videos that make up my Getting Started on YouTube playlist. So you should be able to eliminate those negative questions far quicker than I was able to, and you can find that playlist on my YouTube homepage. The point I'm trying to make is, not knowing what to expect can be a huge obstacle to overcome when starting anything new in life. But it doesn't have to be. Just a little bit of research on your part can reduce that huge forest that's blocking your path down to nothing more than a little shrub that you can just step right over. Now, although education is extremely helpful for eliminating your fear of the unknown, it probably won't do a hell of a lot to get rid of your fear of failure. To remove that fear is going to require a slightly different tactic. Whereas education is the solution to the fear of the unknown, a change in perspective is the solution to the fear of failure. So when trying to eliminate your fear of failure, the first thing you need to do is define what failure means to you. In its simplest terms, failure is just a lack of success, not achieving what you set out to do. Where the problem arises is when you fail to realize that to be successful is going to require some level of failure on your part. Thomas Edison once stated that he had created over 10,000 versions of the light bulb before he actually created one that worked. And when he was asked what it felt like to fail 10,000 times, he replied, "I didn't fail. I just found 10,000 ways that won't work." You see, failure is just a matter of perspective. Achieving anything in life requires taking certain steps, and not all of those steps will be forward. If along your journey you reach an obstacle that you can't overcome, your only option will be to step back, step sideways, and then walk around it. But that reverse step is not a failure in any way. It's simply readjusting your course so that you can achieve what you're trying to achieve. But far too often we see those back steps as failures, and we torture ourselves for making them. No matter what your journey is, you can't control what obstacles are going to appear in front of you. And although you can prepare for some of them, most will be entirely out of your control. The best you can hope to do is to always be ready and willing to adjust your path at a moment's notice, and then to learn from that encounter and take what you can from it. Because not all wrong turns are bad. If you're truly paying attention and constantly learning from each step you make, some of your greatest successes will arise from the ashes of your mistakes. As humans, we tend to focus all of our attention on the end result or the finish line, but spend very little time thinking about what it's going to take to get there. You don't just leap to success, you climb, rung by rung and step by step. And for some stupid reason, if we take a step and we don't reach our end goal, we see that as a failure, instead of what it really is, a necessary step along our journey. The only time you actually fail on your journey to success is when you give up. Every other action you take, other than quitting, is just another step along the path to success. And when you change your perspective and start to see it that way, the fear of failure really has no power over you. When I first decided to start my YouTube journey, I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted my channel and overall business to look like once it was successful. And I had laid out a step-by-step plan of what I was going to do to get there. That plan resembled a perfectly straight one-lane highway heading off into the sunset. 2 years later, that same plan looks more like a 4-lane twisted highway with about 50 off-ramps. You see, I couldn't plan out that journey because I didn't know what I was going to have to do to get there. I was basing all of my information off of what other YouTube creators had done. But they're not me and I'm not them, and no two journeys are the same. What I was bringing to the table at the beginning of my journey and what they brought to the table at the beginning of their journey are two entirely different sets of skills. The things that they may have needed to learn in the beginning, I may have already known, and vice versa. In addition to that, my definition of success may not have been the same as theirs. So the steps that each of us take along the way are going to vary dramatically. Look, you can educate yourself about any journey that you're about to take to help alleviate your fear of the unknown. but you can't prepare for the ups and downs of that journey because there's no way of knowing what's ahead of you. Every person's journey is going to be unique to them, and the only way to find out what's in store for you is to get started. If you want to carve your vision of success into stone, then go ahead. But when it comes to the path of getting there, you're going to want to write that part down in pencil. And you may want to buy yourself a big old pack of erasers while you're at it, because you're going to be making a lot of changes along the way. If you want to succeed at anything in life, then you need to learn how to embrace your mistakes and to learn from them. When you stop seeing your mistakes as failure and instead see them as necessary steps along your journey to success, only then will you have the courage to get started. So if your goal is to start your own YouTube channel, then start by eliminating that fear of the unknown. Educate yourself on everything that you need to do to get started. So the first thing you should do is figure out what your channel is going to be about. Once you have a clear idea of what that is, go and find as many other YouTube content creators who have channels on that same topic and research them. What kind of topics are they making videos about? How are they designing their channel art? And who are they affiliated with? As well as any other type of information that you think will be relevant to the creation of your own channel. Once you've done that, now it's time to educate yourself in all of the other areas that you're lacking skills in. Don't know how to write a script? Watch a video on it. Don't know how to shoot a video? Watch a video on it. Don't know how to edit a video? Watch a video on it. Don't know how to set up your own YouTube channel? Watch a video on it. Not only is everything that you need to know about starting a YouTube business available to you on YouTube, pretty much everything you need to know about starting any type of business is available to you on YouTube. So there is absolutely no excuse for having fear of the unknown when it comes to starting a side business. Now, once you have that fear of the unknown out of the way and you have a pretty good idea of what you need to do to get started, remind yourself that every mistake you make is necessary and just get started. Creating a bad video is not a failure. It's a necessary step towards getting better. Creating ugly channel art and thumbnails is also not a failure. They're simply a means to determining what works and what doesn't. And if you don't get a lot of views or subscribers in the beginning, that's not a sign of failure either. All that information is valuable analytics that will help you to steer your channel in the right direction. Nothing you do from the time you first press record on that camera until the time that you achieve your definition of success is a failure. Everything you do, good or bad, is a necessary step to help you get to where you want to be. And the only time that you fail on your journey is when you quit. If you keep reminding yourself of that every single day, then the fear of failure will be nothing more than a paper tiger, completely harmless. Now, I know that some of you who are watching or listening to this podcast right now might chime in and say something like, yeah, but my problem's not a fear of failure. It's a fear of embarrassment or humiliation. But what you need to realize is that what you're really doing is equating some negative emotion to failure. Why is it that we find it necessary to label certain emotions as negative? I mean, take sadness, for instance. Why is that considered to be a negative emotion? Feeling sad can be very cathartic. That overwhelming feeling of sadness is what helps us to make a visual and spiritual connection to those we've lost. When was the last time you thought about that sock you lost in the dryer back in 2008? It was probably 2008. Why? Because you didn't have an emotional connection to it. Think of all of the acquaintances you've had throughout your life who have since moved on. Do you think about them? Can you even picture their faces? Probably not. And the reason is because you didn't have an emotional connection to them, and therefore you don't miss them. Missing someone makes you sad, and the emotion of sadness is the conduit that allows us to clearly remember them both visually and emotionally. So how is that negative? And the same thing holds true when it comes to embarrassment. The only reason we see embarrassment as a negative emotion is because that's how we as individuals choose to label it. I mean, why is it that we can do something in the privacy of our own home, like say, let out a loud fart, and then just laugh about it and continue on with our day, never thinking about it again? Yet if we were to do that same thing in a crowded elevator in front of a bunch of people we work with, we're humiliated for days. Flatulence is nothing more than air escaping from an orifice in our body. Coughing is also air escaping from an orifice in our body, but you don't see anyone turning red after coughing on an elevator. Although in this day and age, you may see a few people trying to get off the elevator as quickly as possible after you cough, but that's for a whole different reason. My point is that it's the same situation, just in a different environment. And the only thing that makes it embarrassing to us is how we choose to perceive it. So again, it's all just a matter of changing your perspective. You're only seeing embarrassment as a failure because you're choosing to see it that way. If people could just learn to laugh at themselves a little bit more, there would be a lot less stress in this world. One of the biggest mistakes you can make when starting something new is to put too much weight into what other people may think, because not all lack of success is considered to be a failure. Take professional fighting in the UFC, for instance. Now, if a fighter gets into the ring and gets knocked down in the first round, and then he says that he's had enough and he quits, people view that as a failure. Not because he got knocked down, but because he quit. People start saying things like he wasn't prepared and that he had no business being in that ring in the first place. All negative comments. But if that same fighter gets into the ring and gets knocked down in the first round and then gets back up and continues to fight, only to get knocked back down again in the second, third, fourth, and fifth rounds, but continues to get back up each time, even if he loses, nobody sees his effort as a failure. In fact, he'll probably get more praise from the spectators than the guy who actually won the fight. Instead of the negative comments that result from quitting, he's going to get comments like, "That kid's got heart," and "Man, that guy is tough," all of which are signs of respect. It's the same outcome, only this time it took a different path and therefore was judged from a different perspective. In the end, it really doesn't matter if anyone else thinks you failed. What matters is if you think you failed. Remember, just because you start something and then later realize that what you're doing isn't working, so you stop doing what you're doing and start doing something else, that doesn't make it a failure. It's simply readjusting your course to get yourself on the right path to success. When it comes to overcoming the fear of failure, it's all in your head. It's how you perceive your journey. And your opinion is the only one that matters, because you are ultimately the one that is going to set the definition of what success means to you. So educate yourself and kick that fear of the unknown out of the way. And then accept the fact that your journey, no matter what it is going to be filled with setbacks and mistakes, and that those mistakes are going to be a crucial part of reaching your desired goal. Remember, the only time you fail is when you quit. So if you're still moving, whether it's forward, backward, or sideways, as long as you're still moving, you're still on the path to success. Don't let the fear of getting started prevent you from getting what you want and deserve from life. Okay, so I just want to let you know that I'm going to start uploading more drawing tutorials in the coming months. Now, these tutorials are going to be oriented towards doodling as opposed to traditional illustration. The main difference is that there won't be any rough drawings involved. Traditional illustration usually involves starting off with a rough drawing and then layer by layer, slowly adding in more detail until you get what it is you're looking for. It's a far more precise and disciplined way of drawing compared to doodling. As a doodle artist, I've always thought of myself as a lazy illustrator, because doodling has far less rules and it cuts out about 2 or 3 steps of the illustration process. But the great thing about doodling is that it kind of forces you to take chances. When you're using a rough drawing, you tend to follow the basic shape of that drawing as you add more detail to it. But with doodling, you're always drawing on a blank page, so your imagination is always on overdrive. If I'm being honest, the results you get from traditional drawing are usually far better. And that's just because it's a more precise way of drawing. But that being said, doodling is way more fun. So that's the style that I'm going to be teaching you. So if you're interested in learning how to doodle, paint, and how to add highlights and shadow in Adobe Illustrator, then be sure to check out those videos once they're uploaded. They'll be in a brand new playlist called Doodle With Me. Now, if you like these podcast videos, like the one you're watching right now, and you want to see me make more of them, then be sure and give this video a like to let me know. That one little action goes a long way towards helping me get my Doodle Art Podcast out to the rest of YouTube. So thank you. Alright, now I'll shut up and I'll let you enjoy the rest of this doodle in peace. Okay, so hopefully this video has in some small way helped you to overcome your fear of getting started, whatever it is you're attempting to do. Now, if you'd like to learn more about my process for drawing digitally, then be sure and check out my drawing and design tutorial playlist. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. And if you'd like to check out additional episodes of my Doodle Art Podcast series, you can find a link to that playlist right here. Until next time, take care.